Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So today's video doesn't necessarily have to do with race at all. It has to do with the passing of a recent passing of a music legend and his connection to Brazil. So, as you can tell from the title, you know that I'm talking about Quincy Jones. So today's article, today's video, I'm just doing a reflection on Quincy Jones's career. Um, I mean, the man's influences in music is, I couldn't possibly cover his influence in music, something that goes all the way back to the 50s. I don't think I could cover all of that in just, one video. So what I'm going to talk about is Quincy's involvement with Brazilian music and Brazilian musicians, because there is a connection there. Today's video is called Saudade de Você, like missing you, exploring Quincy Jones's admiration for Brazilian musicians and experiments with Brazilian music. So before I talk a little bit about Quincy today, definitely take the time to like this video, share this video, click on the notification bell, subscribe to the channel if you like the content. And well, let's just talk a little bit about Quincy's connection with Brazil. So today, I did a little bit of research on this, as I do with most of my videos, just to find out things. There's a lot of things I knew about Quincy Jones already, but with a career as long as he is, there's no way, I would know everything about him unless I was just somebody who followed everything in his career. Obviously, I would have some catching up to do because Quincy was doing his thing long before I was born. But some of the information that I found today comes courtesy of Billboard Magazine's Brazil edition, Rimas e Batidas website, UOL website, Prêmio da Música Brasileira Instagram page. These are some of the sources that I found some of the information because, as I said, I knew a lot about Quincy Jones as it was, but I wanted to really focus more on his involvement with Brazilian music and Brazilian musicians. I don't remember what exact year that was, but it had to have been about somewhere between 3 and 5 years ago. Quincy Jones had done this interview, and everybody was talking about that interview because Quincy Jones was just spilling the tea on everything. I mean, he was making some bold statements, he was making some jaw-dropping statements, and it was just like, what's going on with Q that he's dropping all of this stuff? Quincy was getting up in age at that point, and I thought to myself, okay, well, does he feel like the end is near? Does he have some things he want to just get off his chest? I wasn't really sure of what brought him to expose so many of the things that he said. Now I'm going to say, because of the things and the perspective that I have when I look behind the scenes of like politics, the music industry, Hollywood, I always find some pretty shady things, a lot of things that people probably won't even believe. But when you keep seeing some of the same standards, some of the same patterns, some of the same people involved, some of the same scandals break out, I've always asked this question: how many times? It's not that all of these conspiracy theories have to be true, but how many of these same things keep coming out before you have to say to yourself, okay, how much of this can I dismiss as just gossip? Okay. And that's the same thing I could say about Quincy Jones. I've seen some videos of Quincy Jones with, various artists, and it just made me a little bit, what's going on with Quincy? This is not the place to talk about that, but those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I remember, matter of fact, I think I was still in Sao Paulo at the time because it was like, I think it was during the COVID thing. And Quincy had done a live video with one of Brazil's most beloved musicians, Milton Nascimento. They did like a video call. They apparently they hadn't talked for years, and so they just reconnected, an old friendship. And I that was 3 years ago, and I said I was gonna post that. It's another one of those videos where I did a write up on it. I had it in my archives ready to go, and I just never posted it. And here it is 3 years later. I never got a chance to post that article, but I am going to talk about it today. So let me just get into some of the things that brings, that shows Brazil, Quincy's connection with Brazil. So it's been a little more than a week since the world lost one of the greatest music producers in American music history. Quincy Jones, the famed composer, arranger, musician, and producer, died on November 3rd at the age of 91. Quincy was and is and always will be a musical art genius. Therefore, it cannot be denied only by the works he did with Michael Jackson, the artist he is most associated with. The biggest entertainment worker, he served big names in jazz, including Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, Sarah Vaughan, Dinah Washington, Miles Davis, Count Basie, Louis Armstrong, Clark Terry, and Duke Ellington. This is just a small list of some of the people that Quincy Jones worked with all, over the years of his career, just jazz greats, pop greats, R&B, soul greats. Quincy did a little bit of everything. Okay. Of course, so everybody knows this is Quincy with Michael, MJ, that particular night in 1984 where Mike took home I don't know, it was like 8 Grammys or something. Okay, everybody remembers that night if you were a Michael Jackson fan and you were alive at that time. This is Quincy with the Brothers Johnson, one of my favorite groups that he used to produce. Brothers Johnsons were big in the 1970s. Of course, the bass player Louis Johnson went on to become one of the most influential bass players in popular and R&B music. He contributed to several Michael Jackson albums, particularly Off the Wall. So Quincy composed soundtracks and produced films, receiving 11 nominations for 1985's The Color Purple. Quincy was the mastermind behind numerous pop and R&B hits of the 70s and 80s. Collaborating with the likes of the Brothers Johnson, Patty Austin, James Ingram, George Benson, Donna Summer. Too many others to name here. I mean, if you know about Quincy, I remember most of Quincy's music is from the 70s and 80s. Not so much the 90s, but the 70s and 80s. I mean, Quincy Jones's name was all over the place. Of course, Quincy was also the producer behind the 1985 star-laden track "We Are the World" to benefit the needy in Africa. This is a photo from the USA Today session. As a child, I didn't even know Quincy's name, but as with other musicians, I knew his music before I knew his name. Quincy was the name behind one of the most memorable TV theme songs of all time, the theme song for Sanford and Son. Everybody in the Black community knows about Sanford and Son. I mean, we all grew up watching Sanford and Son, and we all know the famous song, right? You hear the first lines, the first notes of that song, and you know that's the Sanford and Son theme song. It's iconic. Quincy was also the creator of the soundtrack and the main theme song of one of the most popular miniseries in American television history, Roots. I'm sure anybody who remembers Roots is going to remember that theme song that, when Roots would come on, everybody remembers that song. Besides becoming familiar with Quincy's work in film, television, and my father's album collection, I was also later exposed to Quincy's music through songs sampled by popular hip hop artists such as The Pharcyde, Tupac Shakur, Mobb Deep. I mean, there's numerous others. I just discovered that one of the tracks that Eminem put out was sampled from a Quincy Jones song. I think here we have Quincy Jones. I think this might be will.i.am, and this looks like LL. So Quincy, even with the many genres of music that he experimented with, he was always expanding. Him and Miles Davis were similar in that way. They always wanted to experiment with a new genre of music. You had other people who were more traditionalist, like, hey, why do you all over the place? We know that when hip hop started to grow, like in the 80s, everybody saw it. Well, the critics said that hip hop would never go anywhere. It wouldn't last. This is just, a flash in the pan. But, Quincy was a supporter of hip hop as well. I'm sure many of you know that he's also responsible. He had a big part in getting Will Smith into his first acting role on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like I said, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that I won't discuss today. I mean, I know a lot of you with some of these scandals that's going on. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Others of you will dismiss this. Oh, well, that's conspiracy talk. Like, okay, not going to do that here. Maybe for people who know me know that this is something that I've looked into for a number of years. But let's keep this moving. But my objective here is not to do a full review of Quincy's career, which would be a pretty long video. I will simply ask the question that many of you may ask. What does Quincy have to do with Brazil? Was there a connection between Quincy Jones and Brazilian music and musicians? Well, the answer is yes. Jones had already talked about his love for Brazilian music. He adored the music of Brazilian artists such as Jorge Ben, Gilberto Gil, Caetano Veloso, Milton Nascimento, Ivan Lins, and Simone. So, for those who know Brazilian musicians, this is Gilberto Gil, this is Jorge Ben, this is Caetano Veloso. I have a picture of Milton Nascimento later in this article, in this video. This is singer Simone and the singer, composer, songwriter Ivan Lins. I've been a fan of Ivan Lins for a long time. So let's keep it moving. These are just some of the artists that Quincy Jones. I'm gonna share a video as well of an interview that Quincy did because he knows all of the Brazilian greats. Totally makes sense. As much music that he's been into, it would make sense that he would be familiar with Brazilian music as well. For a long time, Quincy visited Brazil almost annually. He even paraded in 2006 at the Rio de Janeiro Carnival for the Portela Samba School. In the 1960s, after a tour in the country alongside Dizzy Gillespie, with whom he also partnered, he composed Soul Bossa Nova, a samba jazz gem with all of that Brazilian swingy, as they call it in Brazil, like someone born with a cuica in his hand and a samba in his foot. Some of you may not be familiar with the cuica instrument. It's the instrument that you're going to hear in most samba songs. It has that. Some people say it sounds like a monkey. Some people say it sounds like a whimpering dog. There's some American songs I remember that use the cuica in the instrumental. You've got songs by Cameo and then Funkadelic that actually use the cuica in the song. Then when in Portuguese, they say samba no pé. It just means that somebody has a certain rhythm to be able to dance the samba. So it's samba na pé, samba on, somebody dances a good samba. They got good rhythm for samba. It's like they have samba in their foot. People will say. This is Quincy's famous album, Bossa Nova, Big Band Bossa Nova. Forget what I think it's 1962. Jones's 1962 album, Big Band Bossa Nova, featured numerous classic hits from the Brazilian songbook, including Desafinado by Antonio Carlos Jobim and Newton Mendoza, Manhã de Carnaval or Morning of Carnival by Luis Bonfa and Antonio Maria, Se é Tarde de Me Perdoa, Forgive Me If I'm Late by Ronaldo Boscoli and Carlos Lida, the One Note Samba, which originally is titled Samba de uma Nota Só by Antonio Carlos Jobim and Newton Mendoza, and Chega de Saudade, which has been translated as No More Blues, also by Antonio Carlos Jobim, along with his one of the people that he partnered with on some songs, and one of Brazil's greatest songwriters, Vinícius de Moraes. So these are all songs that Quincy Jones covered on this Bossa Nova album. So Quincy's connection with Brazil probably goes back before 1962, but this is one of his albums where he explored the Bossa Nova. Also, I vaguely remember watching the 1978 film The Wiz, which was scored by Quincy Jones. I recently watched this film again with my kids. One night I showed them the original Wizard of Oz film, and the following day we watched The Wiz, which is kind of like a black version of The Wizard of Oz, featuring Diana Ross here and Michael Jackson. I think this is Nipsey Russell, and this might be Ted Ross. I think it might be Diana Ross's brother, if I'm not mistaken. Although I didn't really care for the film, one thing that caught my attention was the carnivalesque scene called Emerald City Sequence, featuring Quincy Jones's take on the Brazilian samba rhythm. This is just a scene from that part in the movie. It caught my eye. When I saw the Wiz some years ago, I would have never noticed that. But as I've been connected to Brazil since the year 2000, when I heard that rhythm and I saw the images that they were presenting, it was almost like they were presenting a little, visitation to Carnival, because the rhythm was clearly samba influenced, and the spectacle, it looked like something you would see during Carnival. So that caught me, because this is the first time that I had watched The Wiz since I was a kid, and that really struck me because, obviously Carnival and samba are things that are highly associated with Brazil. So beyond admiring Brazilian music, Jones also worked with Brazilian music artists such as Milton Nascimento, Ivan Lins, Simone, they call her. In a previous video about George Benson and George Ben, I mentioned how one of my first exposures to Brazilian music was the song Denora on the George Benson album, Give Me the Night. Denora Denora was written by Brazilian songwriters Ivan Lins again and Vitor Martins and appeared on the B-side of the Benson album title track, which was released as a single, becoming Benson's first #1 single on the R&B charts in 1980. This is the B-side of that Give Me the Night song. As you see, if you can see here, it says produced by Quincy Jones Productions. Being an avid reader of album liner notes and credits, the first time I had ever heard a Brazilian percussionist, Paulinho da Costa, was on the Jones-produced breakthrough album for Michael Jackson, Off the Wall from 1979. Da Costa has been a popular studio musician on numerous LPs by just a wide range of artists: Dizzy Gillespie, Earth, Wind and Fire, and just too many more to be able to mention here. A lot of those artists being produced by Quincy Jones. I mean, Paulinho da Costa has been in the game for years. I have to do a story about him. You know, popular Brazilian percussionist. I think he moved to the U.S. sometime in the 70s, maybe. You know, put out some of his own albums. But there are a number of Brazilian percussionists who, you know, made a name for themselves in the United States, as well as the Brazilian music scene. So the aforementioned Milton Nascimento here, seen with Quincy Jones. This is obviously an older picture. This is Quincy with Ivan Lins here, as well as Martinho da Vila, the famed popular samba MPB musician. So this is a recent article after the news had broke that Quincy had passed. Is Quincy Jones, the producer, was a friend of Bituca, that's Milton Nascimento's nickname, and he won a Grammy with a song written by Ivan Lins. Again, this guy right here, one of Brazil's, you know, best songwriters. A song written by the singer-songwriter-producer Ivan Lins was actually being considered to appear on Michael Jackson's blockbuster album Thriller. According to Lins, Quincy told him that he would be featured on the album, although even with the promise, Lins didn't make it onto the album because of contractual differences. So just think about that for a minute. Ivan Lins, I saw in an interview, he was supposed to have a song. There were songs by Ivan Lins that were being considered to be on Michael Jackson's Thriller album. Now considering that estimates of the sales of Thriller go anywhere, I've heard as high as 100 million, definitely 50 million. Some sources say 67 million. I don't know how many copies of Thriller have been sold over the years. We know obviously there was an upsurge since Michael Jackson died in 2009. But just think about it. I'm saying if you're a songwriter who just had one song on that Thriller album, you would be set for life with an album. How many points you get per album? Even if your song wasn't a single, you would have got paid big time from just having one song on a Thriller album, right? In this video right here, Quincy Jones revealed who his favorite Brazilian artists are. So right now, let's take a look at this video. This is Quincy Jones in an interview. Matter of fact, let me just read this section right here. In an interview on the program Por Acaso, on the defunct Brazilian TV network Manchete, Jones also revealed that the song Começar de Novo, sang by popular Brazilian singer Simone, was one of the songs he would like to hear before he died. Actually, that's the name of the song that I have featured here. This is Simone, and the songwriter who wrote the song is Simone and Ivan Lins, the songwriter, Começar de Novo. When you buy compilation CDs with Brazilian music, you're bound to come across that song. You know, a very popular song from probably the 1970s. Although I like both versions of the Começar de Novo song, I actually prefer the version by the song's writer, Ivan Lins. Quincy Jones actually won a Grammy Award for his performance of the Ivan Lins penned song Velas, which was originally released as Velas Isadas. This song appeared on Quincy Jones's 1982 album, the Jones classic 1982 album, The Dude, which was itself nominated for 12 Grammy Awards. Okay, this is Quincy Jones's The Dude album. I remember that album very well. Something in my father's album collection. So right now, I want to let Quincy talk about who are some of his favorite Brazilian artists. I mean, I mentioned a few of them in this video, but let Quincy speak for himself right now.
About the Brazilian artists.
My love, to start with Simone. I love Simone from the bottom of my soul. I love Milton Nascimento, Gilberto Gil, Djavan. Oh my God, Caetano Veloso, Jorge Ben, Vinicius de Moraes, Dorival Caymmi Sr., Dorival Jr., Dori. They are just incredible. I hope I didn't leave anybody out because I love the Brazilian musicians so much I can't tell you. Jorge Ben.
Jorge Ben.
Unbelievable.
Há projeto de
Luiz Bonfá.
Luiz Bonfá.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So as you can hear, Quincy Jones is well versed in Brazilian music. I mean, most of the artists that he named are just going to be well-known Brazilian artists. When I started digging into Brazilian music, I started digging a little bit deeper because I've always said when you get into Brazilian music, it's going to be like the same artists that are on the surface that have the most popularity and have the most access to an international audience that you're going to hear about. You know, Gil, Milton, Caetano, what was the name of that group? The whole Tropicalia movement, Os Mutantes, Djavan. These are all, Carlos Lida, Luis Bonfá, Antonio Carlos Jobim, Vinicius de Moraes. These are all people that if you're into Brazilian music, these are going to be the first artists that you discover. Like I said, after I get past those artists, and I started doing a deeper dive into Brazilian music. There's some gems in Brazilian music's catalog if you start checking it out. Quincy was also good friends with another ambassador of Brazilian music, Sergio Mendes, this guy right here. Sergio Mendes died in September of this year, on September 5th, almost exactly 3 months before Jones's passing. Mendes met Jones just when he was beginning to blow up on the American music scene. Mendes and Jones were label mates on the A&M Records music label for a time. Another longtime friend of Quincy's is Milton Nascimento. During the COVID pandemic, Milton posted a screenshot of a video call with Jones. One of Brazil's most beloved artists, Milton wrote, "How many beautiful memories I have with this guy, a brother I've had since 1967. In 1987, Quincy was credited on Milton's album, what is it? Yaurete. The song Moro Velho is one of the most impactful in Milton's songbook, and it was recorded under Quincy Jones's supervision." Okay, so this is from July of 2021. You see Milton, and if you can see the smaller picture here, that's Quincy. They're both putting up the heart symbol. Let me see what else we got here. Upon learning of Jones's death, Nascimento wrote the following message. "Today, I woke up to the sad news of the departure of my great and beloved friend, Quincy Jones. Quincy was a great admirer and disseminator of Brazilian music around the world and produced many of the most emblematic and important records in the history of the music industry. A while ago, he called me by video call and we killed our longings a little bit, which now will be eternal. Rest in peace, dear brother," Nascimento lamented. Again, so this is from the global website. Milton Nascimento pays homage to Quincy Jones after the producer's death, calls him his dear brother. So this is the same picture that I showed. It's an older picture, probably from about 40 or 50 years ago. So as I am a fan of all types of music, I think that considering Quincy's huge catalog of musical performances and productions dating back to the 1950s, I think the often used phrase, "Quincy may be gone, but his music will live on," is more than fitting. As I appreciate so much of Quincy's music that I do know, there is so much more that I have never heard before, and I'm looking forward to learning more of the music by the man that many knew as simply Q. So anyway, that's my coverage of Quincy Jones's connection to Brazil, its artists, and its music. If you're not familiar with Quincy Jones, it's definitely, you can get a vast music education by just listening to the numerous albums that Quincy either put out on his own or who he produced for other artists. Huge influence in the music industry, and Quincy will be missed. But as I said, the music will always live on. That's the beautiful thing about music, whether it's on CD or MP3 or album or tape or whatever, we can always go back and listen to that music and hear what that artist was doing at that time in their lives. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all, drop a comment in the comment section. What did you think about today's video? Did you know that Quincy Jones had a connection with Brazilian music and musicians? Drop a comment, like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and definitely click on the notification bell so that you know when I put up a new video. With that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back. Check out the next video that I post here at Black Brazil Today.